Your greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another round of League on Fine Feathered Individuals for a little break from the actual preview for 2025 MSI as we go back and relive some of the biggest upsets in MSI history. We're now at a decade of mid-season invitationals happening, if you can believe it.
And I think there's a relatively healthy platter of some of these mistakes, upsets, big losses to dive into that history of our mid-season invitational. Take a look at some of these ones. Some of them have been certainly impactful. They play out into what the ending result is, who's the champion of the event. And some of them simply just added into the fire of all the negativity that can go around in these conversations when you're talking about international disappointments, but a fun time to check back in on these historic and big time moments through MSI.
And two quick honorable mentions before we actually get to the top five are the birth of the Gigabyte Marines nearly exiting Team Solo Mid before they even get to the main stage, and then getting their actual revenge in the main stage, taking a game off of them. And Counter Logic Gaming in 2016, they're a double-edged sword on this one. They have a massive upset in their own right, taking down a then undefeated 7-0 RNG, while also giving the wildcard team Supermassive their only win of the group stage. That is truly Counter Logic.
That is that counter logic attitude and theories that we always knew from that organization coming on through. And I think part of that paves the way for the 2017 issue with GAM that you have with TSM, kind of this idea of everything's okay. Things are still good in the LCS. Look, we can get a game against this unbelievable RNG. Look what we can do. But you can also falter and make a mistake to lose against a Supermassive, and even more so when the dial is turned a little bit more and it's GAM stepping up to the plate, ready, hungry with this aggressive strategy to take down TSM. Doesn't work in that play-in stage, but you're right, later on, do get that edge, do get a cost, do get a penalty onto TSM with that win.
They don't quite make the actual top five. You know, they were quite big upsets in their own right, but we go to a more recent event for number 5 on this list. And anytime you're doing something that hasn't been done in, I don't know, something like 1,300 days, you'll probably crack the list. And that is an LEC team winning a best of 5 against an LPL or LCK squad. And that is exactly what G2 eSports did against Top eSports in China for this MSI. And not only did they beat TES, they completely destroy them in a 3-0 sweep. And if you recall, this was right after this very same TES team just took Gen G, who eventually win this whole event, to an incredibly competitive 5-game series.
And it's this scene where, like, if you haven't remembered or didn't watch the game, go back and check in the 5 or 10 minutes of any VOD before game 1 gets going. Check out the energy, the atmosphere that the crowd is bringing to it, and skip ahead to game 3 to see what a library it has turned into, how silent the whole home crowd fans are for this shocking performance on both ends of the spectrum. One from G2, from the expectations, and the kind of ups and downs through the middle part of the year, which seem to be almost like clockwork for G2 that they go through, to break out of that with the clean, dominant performance that you saw against Top eSports. And then for Top eSports, you laid it out, going the distance, testing Gen G, standing toe-to-toe, only to just stumble and falter, not even get up against G2. What a crazy upset this one was. Very dominant fashion from G2 on the day.
And I think maybe the wildest part was the biggest mismatch on the day, because coming into this was a trajectory. People were not the highest on somebody like Hans Sama. Jackie Love just had a pretty incredible combo alongside Mako in the spring split for the LPL. And then Hans Sama bodies this bot lane in the 2v2 straight up in 3 straight games, huh?
And a bit of a nightmare on that side with Tien on for Top eSports, someone that has been a big time villain for the LEC for Europe in the past in these China-Europe head-to-heads. And especially in this one with Yike, a rookie on the other side, looking to take advantage of the inexperience. It didn't happen. Yike was the one controlling things around on picks like the Ivern and disrupting all the things on the top esports side. This really was a special upset that came through here to kick off MSI.
Yeah, and this was year 2 of Yike on G2. You remember MSI the year before, he was the best player on G2 as a rookie, and that development and growth only continued, and we've obviously seen that come to fruition on Carmine Corp in his time post G2. But yeah, the rec side pick too was an absolute menace in this series, and it felt like there weren't any, it just felt like the LCK and LPL were going to steamroll through this entire bracket. So G2 coming away with this win in the fashion that they did really added the necessary spice to this whole tournament.
Yeah, it really did. And especially in the way that it kind of opened things up, and not only in the way that, okay, well, if top esports can, challenge, give Gen G their money, and then look completely dead in the water against a squad like G2, maybe it is totally open season, open door, anything can happen. And I think you saw a little bit more of that as the MSI event went onwards, and that was a great showing. I think having this one really opened the door, opened the eyes for a lot of people to say, all right, it's not just all done and done. It's going to be, Gen G and top esports at the end. G2 can do it. Why can't we do it? Why can't we cause some trouble and some problems here? This was a really fun one and another good series. I think another angle I want to talk about with it is 369 into Broken Blade. Broken Blade did provide a really strong performance throughout this series, really stable for it against what was at the time one of the more dominant, one of the more power options within the LPL.
If we now go nearly a decade earlier to 2015, the first ever installment of the Midseason Invitational, it's a happier story for the LPL as a region. And yes, we're going to those grand finals, EDG versus SK Telecom. And you might be saying LPL versus LCK. Can that really be that big of an upset? Well, yes, the behemoth that was SKT at the time, they are fresh off of winning the LCK Spring in 3-0 fashion against the GE Tigers. Faker didn't even need to play. It was easy Hoon playing all 3 games that they dismantled the Tigers. Faker and the gang obviously beat EDG in the group stage earlier in the event, and Faker comes in for the Cassidy in game 4, and then we get his 12-0 infamous LeBlanc. This is where the pawn Morgana counter pick, an entire team comp is built around countering this LeBlanc pick, and Faker is still building Majais and trying to hard carry this game, but obviously it does not end up coming through as EDG hands him his first ever competitive loss on the pick.
This one gets a little bit of an asterisk, a little bit of a special treatment, because it isn't maybe as far ends of the spectrum as far as one team's power compared to the other in this regard. But if you do take that time travel journey all the way back to 2015, you realize how dominant a force SKT was at that time. I think they were more feared, more respected than Gen G, with the perfect record that we have seen go through the modern LCK and all the challenges that are there. I don't even think they are at the same type of level that SKT was considered at, given that pedigree, that prestige at that point in time and where they performed. And yes, to come up with something as extreme as down the line as going, yes, he is who you need to stop, and we need to lure them into feeling secure, happy with this LeBlanc pick, and crush them with the counter of that Morgana and the full commitment, full execution on that composition from the side of EDG to be the final stop for that SKT team really is a special moment within MSI's history.
And I mean, you could talk about some of these plays. Faker's LeBlanc never even really gets to be involved, but this is an incredibly dominant EDG team in their own right. But you only need to look at, again, this game when the gold lead was kind of even early on. They used to, I mean, they still do this kind of fan voting in the middle of who you think's going to win. It was 87%. 87 were saying SKT was going to win when this gold lead was pretty much even. Maybe EDG even had the slight edge. Now, a lot of that is just SKT had a whole lot of fans, but it's also, they're not even full dynasty yet, but people have the respect and, as you mentioned, the fear of the SKT War Machine.
And beating this SKT War Machine is the super launching pad trampoline for a lot of these guys on the other side, looking at EDG, their careers, where it goes to from here, adding an accomplishment like this, where it's spread out from that tree. You're talking about players like Death. You're looking at Pawn as well. There was a lot of extreme talent on this side, even if it is one of these miraculous upsets that we do talk about and look back on in the history of MSI.
And again, even though these were two world caliber teams with high expectations, still considered a very big upset. Already had one match, one series from 2024. We got two within the top five. Unfortunately, this one is only to even get to that main stage. And of course, a lot of memes. The near airport one, first and foremost, comes to mind. And this is, of course, FlyQuest versus PSG Talon. FlyQuest had already beaten PSG in round one of the play-in stage. Then there's the infamous lose in 17 minutes to T1, and the mental goes a little bit boom because they get smashed in a 2-0 sweep in a rematch for PSG to advance to the next round. Remember, take us back, this is the international debut for both Masu and Busio, and this is still when Jensen was on the FlyQuest roster, and we had a teensy bit of toxicity between him and Inspired.
Just enough to cause a little bit of a ripple with this team. But yes, this incident is a pretty large catalyst, I think, for a lot of the issues that ended up coming to fruition for that FlyQuest roster, where they had to make the changes that they ended up doing halfway through the year. This loss, a big time one, and another big ouchie on the list for North America. When we're talking about this one, a little bit safe with the Gigabyte Marines, only in the honorable mentions, but the full burn victims here this time around on the taste of PSG. Having that earlier head-to-head victory for FlyQuest, I think boosted their ego, their confidence a little bit too high, and of course getting absolutely then bippity-boppity smacked down by T1 in those 17 minutes probably reset that quite a little bit. But then there is it's only PSG, it's only the play-in squad. We are the champions of the LCS. We absolutely are going to be fine going through this one. Anything but it. And I think a lot of people, even depending on if you were, wherever you landed on the LCS fan spectrum, were calling that you can't be taking this PSG team lightly. This is a team that is capable of throwing it down, throwing hands at this MSI level, moving on, keep pushing that pace and leaving you behind in the dust. And that's just what happened for FlyQuest, left behind at the airport.
The only redeeming part of this for FlyQuest and North America is, at the very least, as we saw throughout the rest of this MSI Worlds that year, and you can even go into 2025 with some different teams, the PCS, now LCP, are legit. And PSG Talon was legit in 2024, I think even better than people anticipated them being internationally. So maybe you pull back a little bit of the claws going into FlyQuest, but there was still so much expectation for this new look squad to perform internationally. And not even, it's one thing to not make top four, but not even getting to the main stage is a disaster for any major region.
Yeah, I think that is the biggest part of this upset because, yeah, you're right. You absolutely should, in a bit of a revisionist history, go back and give more credit, give more points over to the side of PSG and where they were and what they accomplished in this series moving forward through MSI. But yes, you do look at FlyQuest, you do look at the expectations, everything, resources poured in for a major region, and not to get through, not to earn yourself a way, even just in through that knockout part, was very disappointing.
It's very funny now in hindsight seeing, though, people after this series saying this is the last we'll see of this FlyQuest roster. Oh my God. It's just, obviously Jensen is gone. Quad comes in and they proceed to win a couple of titles and have a redemption arc when it comes to the international performances. So maybe this was a painful learning curve that this FlyQuest roster needed to have.
It is, and I don't know if needed, if we ever really always want to go into that type of territory, but certainly one that they have learned from this lesson and have taken to heart the disappointment, all the negativity that goes around it. And you saw that throughout the remainder of 2024 into 2025 that we've seen with this roster and how they have approached these top level opportunities.
Losing to a PSG talent that was competitive against other top teams in the region is one. Losing to a winless Pentanet.gg in a match where you're not eliminated from top 4 yet is another story entirely. And of course, that is Cloud9 at 2021 MSI. This is Iceland Part 1. And the craziest thing during this game is, number one, the coach for Pentanet absolutely losing his mind and showing off his OC number 1 t-shirt. But number two, Perks is laughing. Perks is yucking it up throughout this game. And I'm going, you're losing to an 0-7 team that ends up being 1-9 that basically eliminates you from semifinal contention. What's so funny?
It doesn't matter if that is actually individually down to Perks on the way that you choose and want to have handled the situation to get yourself through it, whatever, all these things. The optics of it from the outside looking in for any type of fan that has put any sort of investment, never mind Cloud9, into LCS as a region at all, laughing while you are losing to Pentanet GG is not the way that it needs to be looking. Yes, unfortunately, the LCS finds themselves here on the list once again, and this one at an even greater cost, losing to Pentanet, losing to the Oceania region. This was a bad one all sorts of ways around. I think there is certain things you can talk about with this Cloud9 team that maybe, raise them back up in your eyes later on throughout the year type of thing, but highly focusing on this MSI, highly looking in on this incredible upset. There is no redemption for Cloud9.
And, you can even look at the maybe disrespectful pick ban. This is when Senna and Tom Kench were absolutely busted. They give it over to Pentanet. And how about even losing to an Udyr for your boy Pabu?
I was gonna say, don't you be forgetting about Mr. Pabu in the jungle, the all-star specialist coming on in and making it happen on the Udyr. Yes, I think this is right when Udyr started to become this absolutely bonkers, broken, brain-dead champion within the jungle, running around and causing problems. You add that on top of, as you said, the Tom Kench Senna, which at the time was at its ultimate peak as far as almost insta-win condition, having that on your side. Cloud9 giving it over. The draft isn't anything good. The execution, the seriousness, how they approached this wasn't at the level that is acceptable for professionals. And kudos to Pentanet, absolutely punished them on the day, and they were living it up, enjoying the glories of victory and making this type of upset happen.
What's extra perplexing is this same Cloud9, you saw them play a fantastic game to take a game off of RNG, who win the entire event, and then earlier in the previous stage, they got a game against Damwon, who are the defending world champions. So the two ends of the spectrum, to be able to beat those squads and lose to Pentanet, I'm surprised they weren't CLG on this one.
Oh God, it's only the LCS that seems to make storylines like this happen, whether good or bad, all the way through. It really was a disappointment. I don't think that can be over or understated enough when you're talking about this loss to Pentanet. And it's not meant to be any real disrespect to Pentanet, but how spectacular it was. But it really was that type of bottom level. There is no way further than down from here for the LCS to lose to a region like this with the major region label put on yourself.
But fret not, LCS or LTA North fans, because the final upset on this list is you. In a positive light, of course, it is still Team Liquid taking down Invictus Gaming in the 2019 semifinals. This is defending world champion IG, fresh off a dominant run in spring. And remember, they chose Team Liquid. They were the first seed from the group stage, went 9-1, only lost that single game to SKT on the final day of group stage action, and said, give us Team Liquid. North America can't do anything. They didn't actually say that, but we knew that they felt that, and Team Liquid doesn't even need 5 games to complete the upset.
I can't believe this is where they ended the MSI right here after this matchup, right?
This is the whole event. Yeah.
There was supposed to be some other game. They didn't play it. We didn't. Nothing happened after this one, right? Yeah, just only Team Liquid coming up with the mega upset of all times. Yes, this one takes the cake for MSI. I think part of it is a combination of some of the history that we have, gone through and looking about with the North America, and that label has stuck through no matter if it's MSI or Worlds, whatever international event it is, as far as these disappointments, and leading right into exactly why Invictus Gaming chose Team Liquid, identified them as the prime target, the easy path to move on through. Anything but the easy path when Mr. Core JJ is locked in on the day alongside Double It.
Yeah, and obviously this was the first international event with Core JJ in the lineup, and the difference was paramount in this series versus the 2018 MSI run for TL. But the fashion that they win this series, I mean, the Shy had an incredible series across the board. Team Liquid played around him well at times, just avoiding him in a side lane. Hey, whatever works for you. Double If's even playing Vayne and picking up a win in this series. Like, it felt like just an absolute fan story for anyone from the LCS for how this thing played out.
It was the perfection, really, right? And it's the rare combination of everybody hitting a 10 out of 10 on the same dice roll type of thing. You had Double It popping off on the Vayne, as you talked about. You had Jensen holding down in the mid lane against Rookie, no problem. One of the best in the world, fresh off a world championship. I'm right there. I'm locked in and I'm performing like it. This was everything from the Team Liquid squad. Really like that we get to end off this list and give a little bit of sunshine. I don't think it makes it all of a sudden we're the champions of MSI type of situation for the LCS LTA, but absolutely a little bit of redemption here at the end, getting a mega upset like this.
And you need time to kind of really enjoy this win, because in live time it was so quickly deflated as they got smashed by G2. But here we are, taking pride in this win. And how about Jensen being on both ends of the spectrum for this list with both FlyQuest and Team Liquid? He's lived the suffering and the jubilation.
The full LCS sandwich right there. That's how we're rolling that one out of the deli shop right now. But yes, I think that this list is one of these ones where it kind of paints the picture of some of the upsets, some of the drastic extremes and the storylines that play into them that you can see at an MSI event. And of course, ending it with a little cherry on top for the LCS to keep ourselves positive.
Shout out to the LCS for filling out most of this top 5 in some fashion. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with Team Beauties. Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you on that flippity flip.